Hey, welcome to The Perspective today. Julie, we're going to talk about money.
Okay.
We got a good friend on again, Erik Weir.
Always great to have you.
And I'm going to try to keep a straight face, but he's going to help us out a lot. By the way, where's the money I loaned you?
My cousin has it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. You know, in these days of economic tension and depression and recession, I just feel like, man, I want to collect from everybody. I think my kids owe me money.
You
I'm
think
not
so?
sure.
You're not sure, but you're going to find out.
I know someone else's kids who are robbing them blind, and that's Erik's sons. Erik, welcome to the program again. We're glad you're with us.
Oh, thanks for having me on. No, thank you so much. I really enjoy it.
Just make me feel very discouraged, okay? How much does the average kid cost before they get out the door?
Oh, boy.
I don't know that I'm average or not, but it's a terribly high number for sure.
Yeah.
It's high.
I heard there was a couple $100 grand.
It's that for sure. Yeah, it's way more than that. I've heard much higher numbers. I don't know that they're backed by scientific research, but at least by experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I know is my back pocket's worn out from pulling my wallet out too many times. But anyways, and all my kids, they know my PIN number. Even my adult kids, when they come home, they take my card. You know what? Anyways, I'll quit crying. I'm glad that they do come home every once in a while, even if it is for a loan. But Erik, let's talk about...
They'll have my Amazon account. You sign to Amazon, they get on Amazon. And
there you go.
Being shipped to colleges and other places. I'm like, really? Did I order that? Interesting.
I know, right?
No doubt.
Erik, what's going on in the States and in Canada? Are we going to bottom out? Talk to us about the financial situation. Give us a look from 30,000 feet.
Well, the basic thing to think about is that all economies, they're based on available of capital or money. And when money becomes more expensive, at some point in time, then things begin to slow down. You begin to slow down activities. And the Federal Reserves of the world have been increasing interest rates because of the fear of inflation and getting more out of hand than it was. We're seeing signs around the world that inflation is slowing, but it's not necessarily reversing. So the expectation is that rates will stay higher longer than most of us originally anticipated. So there'll just be some more slowing. And in that, it's hard to do that scientifically. So some areas will be largely not impacted. Other areas might be impacted a lot. And in that, you'll find oftentimes that there are opportunities that emerge anytime that there's a difficulty.
Okay, so can I jump back? Is some of what we're dealing with right now because everything was propped up during COVID? I mean, it just seemed like things just took off. There was money everywhere, even though no one could go to work.
To put it in perspective, I mean, if you go south just a little bit to America, and there were tens of trillions of dollars of liquidity pumped in the financial system. So, and when that money goes into banks, it is lent out, and then it goes into the bank again and again. It cycles through, they say 7 to 10 times. So using 10 million as a number, if you multiply that times 7 to 10 times, that's $70 to $100 trillion. And the U.S. economy is around a $21, $22 trillion economy. So you have effectively a tsunami of liquidity coming over an economy. And that's why you have more money chasing the same number of goods and services, or effectively the same. And that makes prices go up because there's more competition. And the only way to unwind that is have less money chase the same number of goods and services or building or construction materials. And that's what stops or slows inflation. So in order to unwind that, it's going to require a lot of work.
So I want to talk about faith and common sense, and I can't help but think about how many people have had to go to food banks now. And I was just talking to my husband the other day that even food banks are so overstressed that they don't even have the workers, some of them, because the need has become so overwhelming, and so you have not enough workers to be able to meet the need, and then the need is overwhelming. Then you think, okay, how do I mix faith and common sense together with that, and money work together?
Yeah. So what you try to do is be a good steward. I mean, what I always tell people is, one of my favorite verses is trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not unto all in your understanding, acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He'll direct your paths. That's one of my favorite verses. And how do you apply that day to day? Well, you need to be shrewd. And if you're thinking, hey, if you're seeing your income could come down, or you have subscription services, maybe you have 3 or 4 things that you watch online, or maybe there are things you can cut back, or with the generics, or if you have access, to your point, go volunteer at food banks and help to give back, because it's a difficult time. But there are those who have access, and there's those who have lack. And if those who have access are able to give up time and energy and resources, it makes things a lot easier. Actually, met a gentleman today who volunteered to build a play set with 2 other couples for a child who has terminal cancer. And they took the girl out for ice cream and lunch and to play. And my friends aren't particularly mechanical, so it took a little bit longer. So I had to find something else to do, maybe a movie also. But when they came back, the child was overwhelmed with the play structure. And what was so interesting is not only did the child feel fantastic that she was recognized and had a play structure, but everybody there felt overwhelming joy. And of all the things they had done, probably the last 10 years, that was the most meaningful. So oftentimes, if you take time to give back, it changes your life more than those who you think you're helping.
I think that's so important. Really great point there, that if we can give back, because then we're helping each other.
Well, here's
no doubt.
Let's take it just a slightly different way. Erik, you've written an amazing book. I personally have benefited from it. It's called Who's Eating Your Pie? Right. And that's why the last time we were together and had lunch, I didn't order pie, because I figured you'd take a bite of mine. That's how you taught your son.
You're smart. That's my standard move is to tax all pies near me.
But here's the deal. Draw a principle from that book and teach us, how do we invest in times like this? Or do we pull out our small investments and hide it under a rock right now? Because it seems like a lot of times we're losing money rather than gaining. What would you say to the average guy that maybe has a portfolio of under $500,000?
So I would say for most people, it goes back to duration of time, right? How long do you have? If you have 1 or 2 years, then maybe you play a little more conservative. You have 5 or 10 years, then maybe you wait it out. If you look at the U.S. economy, or you look at the S&P 500 or the Canadian economy, and you go back to 20, 30, 40 years, there's been consistent growth for a long period of time. So for most people who don't have skills of trying to time everything, and a lot of us who think we do, we really don't have skills to do that either. So the idea is just to do a little bit over time. And really, if you see things on sale, meaning companies are down, markets are down, real estate is down. If you have an opportunity to participate in that and buy at that time, it's great. It's really hard to pick the bottom, but it's fairly a secure bet over time that a broad, diversified portfolio will go up over time. But it will have setbacks along the way.
If I hear you right, then it really does depend. It really does depend what stage of life you're in, whether you're just starting out or in the middle, or later on, as to how much risk and how much play you feel you can have, if I'm hearing you right.
You're hearing me exactly right. One thing people can do is talk to a financial advisor. Are there various books you can find, like How to Invest for My Age? You can Google that and find different things. But for most people, the best thing is to keep it very simple, to keep it very diversified, and to do it over time. And the only thing I can tell you is fear does not pay dividends, but being consistent over time and doing a little bit every month, it really does over time. And I know that I've had kids in college, and I started a college fund for them. Probably in 2003 or 4. And then 2008 or 9 happened. Their values were below what they were in 2004 or 5. And it was down over 5 years. But I kept buying in 2008, 2009, 2010. And then 5 or 6 years later, I looked brilliant because you were buying at the lows. So if you do it over time, you'll be buying at both the lows and the highs.
Fantastic. Erik, We're going to be right back. I got some more questions for you on the financial world that we're living in right now, but we're going to be right back after this short break.
For those of us who follow Jesus, we have a book. It isn't a theology book. It isn't a rule book. This book is a story. The story of God and humanity. A story Jesus said he was fulfilling. This book contains poems, riddles, letters, puzzling narratives, and new ideas. Yet, throughout it all, this book is full of the breath of God. For those of us who follow Jesus, this book is a treasure. This book is a tree of life. This book is a page turner. Turn the page with us.
Well, we're talking today with Erik Weir. And Erik, I just want to say, so as a person of faith, how do you feel Jesus wants us to look at money, and especially in times like these?
Yeah. So money is an amazing thing. It's mentioned more in Scripture than love, if you can imagine that. It's really it has a huge impact in our life. And one of the things that I've noticed about people from personal observation is the tighter you hang on to it, the more it controls you. So it seems in Scripture there's a model of being generous, being a generous giver, and that seems to lessen the control that money has over us. And also at the same time, it tends to, for some reason, you seem to have more than you always need. I've never known a generous person in lack, at least personally speaking. That being said, I think there's a responsibility with your money. So if you blow it, I mean, no matter how much you make, you can spend it all. I've worked with people that make over $10 million a year and don't save anything. And you say that's hard to believe. And I've worked with people who make $45,000, $50,000 a year who save a third of it. And what you'll find is people, when you have a little bit of money or you make a lot of money, unless you've educated yourself, your habits really don't change. So people make 25,000 and spend 30. You'll make 100 and spend 110, 200 spend 230, and you'll be in the same spot. If you're not in the same spot, it's usually just because of happenstance, like you got busy and forgot to spend. But they're just habits that we have. And what I tell people in my book is really to save the raise. Get to a point where you're comfortable, and then let's say you get a 5% raise. And if you're able to, then you maybe save 2.5 and enjoy 2.5, or save half of it. And over time, if you get a bonus or a refund check or a gift from graduation, just begin to save it and do some investing over the long haul, and it'll change your life.
People say, I don't have enough money to share or to give away. How do you respond to that?
You do. So usually, and there are examples where somebody just is telling you the truth when I say this. I can't say this 100% of the time. For those people, if you could volunteer an hour at a food bank, something like that, it'll change your life. It's amazing how by focusing on someone else's need makes your needs seem less overwhelming. And it's just a law of giving and receiving. But for most people, there are things you can do. I mean, when I was younger in life and I liked coffee, I would go to Starbucks and spend $3.50 for coffee. And I thought, how about if I made it at home for 20 cents? That doesn't sound like anything. But if you don't take the other $2 and set it aside, you'll spend it on something else. So maybe you're not on coffee, but you'll spend it on the movies or a tub of popcorn on the weekend or something like that. So you really have to be intentional with your earnings and with your plans.
So let's look at something practical as well. Should you pull your money out of RRSPs and buy real estate? Is that something we should do or not do right now?
Especially right now when the market is so ups and down.
I think real estate is going to be impacted by more expensive money. So I would expect real estate to go lower next. And I think that really all investments, whether the stock market or anything, is a calculation of a risk-free rate of return, which when treasuries were lower, government backed, were 0.5% or 1%, and you had a risk rate of return of 5%, then 6% was your desired rate of return for most people. But if interest rates are 5, now it's going to be 10 or higher. Right. So what that happens is that makes risk assets reduce or go down in value so they can compensate for the higher cost of a risk-free return or an alternative. So really just about any asset should decrease in value as rates go up. Some, like real estate, you have offsetting things like an area or an income, or if it's a VRBO, there's always pockets. And due that it's what's called an illiquid market, meaning I can't sell my house this afternoon at a fair price, it would be at a discount. That if you have distressed owners, then they typically are motivated to sell in a short period of time. So they're willing to accept a lower price than what the market would normally bear. So that in real estate creates disproportionate opportunities. It's not necessarily a distressed real estate market. It may be a distressed real estate owner.
You know, Erik, in your book, you also address a situation where perhaps many people are in today. They don't have savings. Maybe they've seen their retirement plans plummet, and they're trying to think, I need to make some extra money. You talk about creative ways to do that. Maybe just give us 1 or 2 tips on what to do if somebody feels stuck with their financial situation today.
I'll tell you some things that I've seen people do. Everything from go to on Craigslist or eBay or sell things in their house they're no longer using. I've seen people buy furniture at a garage sale for $5 a piece and paint it. There's a brand called Shabby Chic that was started in San Francisco about 40 years ago by a single mom with 4 children who bought furniture in the San Francisco Bay Area on the weekends and painted them during the week and then sold them a week or 2 later for like 20, 30 times what she had in it. And that was called Shabby Chic. That's how that started. So oftentimes the setbacks and the things in life we find so disappointing create the most opportunity. So you have a time to reinvent yourself. If you have extra time, begin to study something, maybe do something online. But oftentimes for most people, if you find something that you can acquire and then sell to someone else at a higher price is a very easy first step. And if you have time or energy, whether it's cleaning somebody's house or eaves or cutting grass or helping someone study, just about anything can be turned into a business. And I've heard almost everything from people.
And it sounds like to me, obviously being a person of faith, that, when things are pressed, when things get tough, and we pray and God just maybe puts something on our minds, like one of these great, neat projects, and it blossoms, and an opportunity that we wouldn't have normally thought of maybe comes to light, is birth.
Yeah, if I have 30 seconds to tell you a story, a friend of mine went bankrupt and lost his car, house, everything. And he came to me. I said, well, if you couldn't fail, what would you do? He said, I would buy this old textile mill and then I would sell it. Why would you do that? He said, I'd use sell the copper. I would sell the wood and the bricks. Like, well, amazing. What's it worth? And he told me each component was worth more than twice the value of it. And I said, he doesn't have the money. And I said, well, call the copper guy, call the wood person, the brick person, have them give you a deposit equal to 1/3 of the value. Use that to buy the property. And then when you acquire the property, then they pay you for the rest and you make a profit. He did that and went from a net worth of negative to very positive in about 120 days.
Wow.
And that's an unusual example with their individual skill set. But if you think outside the box and just take time to think and pray, and not everyone could do that, right? But maybe there's something else. Maybe it's babysitting. Maybe it's a car washing. Maybe it's maybe it's picking up a second shift on the weekend. So just think, where are you and what can you do? And there's almost always an alternative.
Thank you so much.
Erik, it's always helpful hearing from you. Enjoyed the times we have chatted. Thanks for speaking into our lives today. And remember, you and I have all these kids, and at some point, there's going to be payback. Isn't that true?
I have told them I'm going to spend time. I have 5. So I have 5 places I can spend a week at a time and rotate through. And they said, Dad, you always say people are like fish. After 3 days, they stink. So my rotation needs to be, maybe I'm down to a 3-day, so I'm on a 15-day cycle. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, hey, I'm counting on my kids paying me to stay away. Anyway, you got to be creative. Erik,
that is opportunity. I'm learning from you every day.
There you go. There you go.
So good chatting. Thanks
so
again
much,
for being
Erik.
here.
Take
Erik
care.
Weir, he's written a fantastic
pleasure.
book called Who's Eating Your Pie? Get a copy of it on bookstore, on Amazon. You know how to do it. You can find it. Who's Eating Your Pie?
At 14, I ceased to be a Christian.
Your mother loves you very much.
Either there's no God behind the universe, a God indifferent to good and evil, or worse, an evil God.
How could a mere man be called a great moral teacher and say the sort of things Jesus said?
That night, as I read Phantastes, my imagination was baptized. The rest of me took a little longer.
You know what I appreciate about Erik is that he's a very successful man, but he's a person of faith. And his point about you can always be generous, even if it's with your time. If it can't be with money, if you're really in a hard spot, we can all, in some little small way, give back and help each other up.
You know, that is so true what you said. And he has been very successful, but he's taken a lot of hits along the way. And if you read his book, you're quickly going to learn that. One of the best principles that helped me out of his book is a discipline that he does. Are you ready for this? Basically every day, at least 5 times a week. He writes down his to-do list, his goals, not just for the day, but for the year.
Yeah.
And, like we have our New Year's resolutions and we forget about them. He does it every day and he refines. He says now it takes him about 20 minutes. He does it at the end of the day so that when he wakes up in the morning, he's clear, he knows what he has to do, even if it's trying a new idea.
Right.
And I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed in this financial time saying,
really
what can
is.
I do? But, write down some ideas. You could sell some jewelry. I could sell my motorcycle, different things. I didn't really mean to do that, Julie. But we get stuck. We get stuck. And my hope is that people will get unstuck and not be trapped by their circumstances.
And think out of the box like he talked about.
Okay, I'll sell my motorcycle. I might have to. I did it once when my daughter had to go to university.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that's an investment. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
There you go.
I'm going to be right back, and I'm going to talk about your temptations and my temptations and how it's really easy to compromise, especially in these financial times that people are struggling with. Stay with us. Possibly one of the biggest temptations that we face in the context of money and what Julie and Erik and I were chatting about is the temptation to not trust in the promises of God, that He will provide. It's very easy to compromise. It's very easy to say, hey, how can I grease the table? How can I do something underhanded so that I can get ahead? And that's what temptation is. It promises something good if we do something bad. And Jesus calls us to trust Him radically. I think one of the things that an economic time like we're going through now exposes to us is how much we hold on to things. Because you see, we were talking over the last couple of days about various kinds of temptation. We talked about how we want things our own way, the things we crave. And that can be money, sex, it can be food, it can be all sorts of addictive things. We talked about wanting everything for ourselves. Just make me happy. What is it that I can do right now that will make me happy? And then the other thing we talked about is wanting to appear important, which is being boastful. And it can be very embarrassing when we hit rock bottom, especially financially, to keep our head above water. Many people get depressed. Some people even commit suicide when things financially tank. We need to be anchored to a rock. And we also need to recognize, though, how temptation can sneak up on us. You see, one of the things we said, we talked about 2 grips so we don't slip. And the first grip was, don't blame God for something he didn't do. You know, as we look at our financial situation around us, more often than not, it is fueled by man's greed and the fact that he doesn't want to share. Beautiful thing about the early church is that as people had need, they shared with them. And many times we can be critical and say, oh, they're just giving stuff away, They ought to be smarter than that. Teach that person to work. Sometimes it's very hard to get back on your feet. And if you're in a position to help people do that, I want to encourage you to do that. It's so important, so critical. Sometimes even to give someone an interest-free loan or to help them out with a gift is going to be huge. But one of the grips that we hold on to, that we don't slip, is don't blame God. Don't blame God. Remember we read in James 1:13, when tempted, no one should say that God is tempting me. But the second grip is this. It's being aware of how temptation sneaks up on you. And when it comes to finances, it can be maybe what's the get-rich-quick scheme. Erik talked about investing little by little, month after month. And even when the market went down, he kept investing and buying in when it was low, so that eventually it turned around and it became profitable. But that takes discipline. But temptation has a predictable course. And whether it's, something about a sexual nature, whether it's about food, whether it's about addiction, whether it's about the way I handle money, and here's one thing, you're going to be tempted when things are tough to not put God first, to not give him of your tithes and offerings, but say, I'll wait till later on, or I can't do it right now, I can't make it meet. God says, trust me even now. See, the pathway to temptation is this. It says we're drawn away by our own evil desires. The analogy is of a fish that goes after the baited hook. Never understood why a fish wanted to chase a worm. But regardless of that, we are very similar. We chase after foolish things, chase after my motorcycle. It could be chase after jewelry. It could be a chase after a position. The list is endless. And I'm trying to be transparent here with you as well. We need to know ourselves. We get tempted when we're pulled away by our own evil desires. And then the verse in Scripture actually says we're dragged away. It's kind of comical, isn't it? I don't wake up in the morning and say, just drag me away so I can be tempted. But we go a little further and further and further down the road, hoping it's going to turn out. See, the Scripture says that temptation attacks us over a period of time. Seldom is it you get up in the morning saying, boom, here's the big temptation. I'm going to go out and have an affair. No, it happens when I don't come home on time. It happens when I get angry at my wife or your spouse, and when you neglect the things that are important, when you don't tend your own garden. And then we get tempted to say, God, I deserve something better. She doesn't love me. He doesn't love me. And we make all sorts of bad choices. And James says when we get to that point, temptation produces death, which is exactly what Satan wants, but exactly the opposite of what Jesus wants. He wants you to live in victory. And he's saying, let me partner with you to find a way out. Why don't you write to us today at The Perspective? Let us know you're listening. Let me know how the program has helped you. Thanks for watching. And from all of us at The Perspective, may God's blessing be on your life.